Hey guys, it's Kelsey. I'm back with another scrapbooking process video, and this is layout 1 with my Felicity Jane kit for this month. And I'm not a primary color person, but for whatever reason, this page I was feeling the red, yellow, and blue. So I went ahead and pulled in this red grid as my background. I really liked the navy solid, and then this just bold white and yellow diagonal stripe. I just like what it added to the mix, so that's what we're going with. There is a lot of color in these photos, so I really wanted to kind of do a more colorful one without it being every color of the rainbow. So I think this is a good mix. This is from when my brother was in town for Christmas a couple years ago. We went and did an escape room with our step siblings, at least 2 of our 3 step siblings. So this was their first time doing an escape room with us. And I think they got to see our competitive side come out a little bit, which I don't think they had seen before. But both of these are 4x4, so I just matted them on some white. I'm going to mat them together on the navy, and I just trimmed that chunk of the navy where you could see the scallop branding strip that I left on the paper. I really like that detail, so I'm just planning on trying to squeeze a branding strip on here. There's a couple I was going between, but I think I ended up going with that navy star. And then I just want a decent chunk of this yellow. I don't want to use a ton of it, and I'm definitely going to be gutting since we're in the beginning of a Felicity Jane month. But I just want there to be a pop of yellow around this navy, so I'm just trying to see how I want to do that. I don't want it completely encompassing the navy because I think it would look too boring, so I'm just going to have it run around 3 sides just to give it a little bit of interest. And this also allows me to gut a good chunk of this yellow to save it for another page. So I'm going to get that done really quick. And these are the main paper layers here. And then you can kind of see I already put together a little embellishment cluster with some red, yellow, and blue die cuts and chipboard. So there was another die cut, that Joy, Finding Joy in the Ordinary, was very similar in style to the A Beautiful Mess die cut. So I thought it'd be really nice if I could get them both on this page and have one in each cluster. Originally, I was trying to make a similar cluster to what I had down at the bottom and use that navy circle frame, but proportionally just wasn't looking right, so I kind of go in a different direction. But I really like the cluster I kind of started here at the bottom. I'm going to pop some foam up on that A Beautiful Mess die cut so it can lay flat over that chipboard frame. And then I really like how that gingham navy tag with the yellow hole reinforcer kind of ties it all together. I also thought about using these red photo corners on this page, but I changed my mind. It just kind of, I don't know, wasn't feeling it. So, but I like where the paper layers are going, so I'm going to go ahead and get this stuff glued together at least. And then I'll kind of figure out from there. I wasn't sure how high or low I wanted my photo. Kind of wanted it kind of more in the middle of the page, but I did scooch it up a little bit just so I had room for that cluster on the bottom. And this is where I go in and I commit to the navy star branding strip. I think that looks really cool. This escape room we got out, I don't know what the difficulty was. I don't think it was a hard escape room. But it was the first one that our step siblings, Caroline and Chris, had done. So I'm sure we didn't do with the difficult level. I don't know if it was easier or intermediate, but I accidentally skipped a whole chunk of the room because one of the puzzles was a lock with a 4-letter word, and the room was pirate themed. So I was just trying to think of like a 4-letter word that was pirate themed. And the first word that came to mind, or maybe it was 5-letter word, was wind or winds. And so I just tried it in the lock and it ended up being right. And apparently we weren't supposed to guess that answer. You were supposed to do several other puzzles to get to that word. So I ended up skipping a chunk of the room. So we got out with plenty of time. But as you can see, that's why I chose the sign that says we escaped because of me. Because I feel like I definitely was the MVP of this room. But it was a ton of fun. The whole premise was like we had to find the treasure within an hour before something happened. I don't really remember the full storyline, but it was a ton of fun. I'm glad we escaped and they kind of got to be a part of that with us. This was still post-COVID kind of, where you had to do your own room, so we didn't have the full amount of people. and you couldn't mix with strangers. So I'm glad we were able to get out with just the 5 of us. So now that I'm trying to compose my second cluster, I definitely want that joy piece in the upper left-hand corner of the photo to kind of balance out the cluster in the bottom right. And there were some chipboard hearts that came in the chipboard die cut pack that I added in with this collection. So I just did a red, yellow, and blue to tie those colors together with one of the black and white speech bubbles just to add a layer. And then I didn't need the whole speech bubble because it was covered behind the navy mat. So I did just trim it in half and add it to the other cluster just for the extra layer. I didn't really need that added down there, but since I did have it in a layer in that top cluster, I decided I might as well use the rest of it in the bottom cluster. And this is pretty much the design with the product. And then I'm realizing it's looking too plain, but I don't really want to add, I don't want to introduce any more colors, but everything else I have in this color scheme I wasn't really wanting to add. So I decided to do a couple things to the background to kind of make it more interesting and not as plain. You can see I definitely want some journaling, and I'm thinking my journaling is going to be to the lower left of the yellow diagonal. So I was thinking about maybe using that navy fringe to kind of be the top of where I do my journaling, but it just wasn't looking right. So I will do my journaling down there. I'm just really trying to figure out what else I can add before I'm like, you know what? Let me just do something to the background to make it more interesting instead of trying to add more product. So this is definitely a more basic layout, but I usually like my first or two Felicity Jane layouts to be a little simpler because I'm not trying to use a ton of the product right off the bat. I was proud of myself as it was for using 3 different papers, because usually that first layout that I do with Felicity Jane, it only will cut into one of the 12 by 12. So I was proud of myself for using 3 of the papers right off the bat. But obviously I'm gutting as I go, which is nice because I have several different patterns going forward for layering. And this is where I decided to do a little bit of mixed media. So once I gutted the background, I was like, I think it would be really cool to do some white splatters on this red grid just because it's a more simplistic background. I just wanted it to be a little bit more interesting. So I just took some white acrylic paint and a little bit of water, and I'm just going to splatter that around with my paintbrush. And I got very splatter happy, but this actually dries. I think I added too much water to it because it definitely dries down a little bit more translucent and not as opaque as I initially wanted. But I think it adds a cool touch. So you'll see as it dries, it kind of becomes more subtle, but I still think it's a really cool touch. And then since I did gut that huge piece in the background, I'm just going to glue this all down to a scrap piece of black. But now that I've got that down, I'm going to glue everything together, and then I need to do some journaling. But I like how that little bit of like messy white goes, and I think it kind of goes with the sentiment of that die cut in the lower right hand. It's just the die cut itself says a beautiful mess, which I think adding that splatter is a beautiful mess. But it goes with the theme of the chaos that ensues when you're in an escape room and everyone's running around trying to solve all of these puzzles. So I'm going to go ahead and do my journaling down here. I'm just using a navy pen for that, and it just says Caroline and Chris joined us for our sibling escape room challenge. We chose a fun pirate theme room where we had to find the treasure within an hour. We had so much fun. I definitely gave us a leg up by guessing the answer to a lock early in the game, which resulted in us being able to skip some of the puzzles. We finished with plenty of time left over, and our step siblings got a peek at our competitive side. So I'm just getting all of that jotted down. I haven't been journaling very much, so since I had this gridded background, and I'm not really planning on doing a title because the title is in the photo, I just thought I needed some journaling on here to kind of explain. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I'm going to get that down, and then once I kind of realized how much that acrylic paint dried down, I decided I wanted some extra pops of opaque white. So I do go in with my white Nuvo drops and just do 3 little clusters just so I can get that extra texture and that really nice pop of bright white, which I was hoping the acrylic paint would be, but it's still a cool look. So got my 3 little clusters, and here are the close-ups. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next process video. Bye.